I'm very happy that we get to showcase Satelligence to the French market today. Can you please explain to the audience what are your activities?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm the only organization in the panel that you don't know. So I'll tell a bit about that. We are a company based in the Netherlands, which I joined 7 years ago. Then we were just 4 people in a coffee place. I always have to say coffee place because I'm from Amsterdam. Otherwise, people think it's a coffee shop. Anyways, now we are around 40 people in 5 continents. So we've grown a lot as an organization. And what we really do is measure deforestation and carbon emissions in supply chains, mainly supply chains in the subtropics, like palm oil, cocoa, and soy. We do that using satellite data in combination with supply chain ownership data. So that way we can see not only where deforestation is, but also what is driving that. So what is the land use change that we see and who is responsible for it? So which company in a supply chain is actually responsible for that deforestation? It's been quite a journey for us as a company. When we started out, we mainly worked with growers, so producers of these commodities that usually had voluntary sustainability commitments. And that has evolved over time, working with traders and consumer good brands like Mondelez, Unilever, Touton on identifying their deforestation risk, but also help them with compliance on upcoming regulations. And then the reason why we're here, also the work with financial institutions really started in the past 2 years.
How do you work with them? Can you tell us more about your partnership, where and how you intervene in their strategies?
Yeah, sure. I think when we started as a company, we didn't imagine being here today in a session talking about finance and biodiversity. It was easy to sit around or get on a table with asset managers using buzzwords like satellite data, AI, machine learning. Everyone amazed, you know, it's easy to talk to people, but it always stopped after that first conversation. Like there was no connection between us and working with financial institutions at that time. And that has changed a lot. And what we mainly hear, paraphrasing a bit, is that most financial institutions are really started to look for a better understanding of their environmental risks, and the available tools for measuring ESG are simply not sufficient. Yeah, so maybe some 3 examples where, like, what do we work on with financial institutions? So the first groups are then asset managers, also a lot which has signed up for your Finance for Biodiversity pledge. And we work together with them providing reports for their portfolios. So we have the deforestation data, we have the supply chain data, and we combine that by providing reports on an aggregated level. So they can see how is a Unilever doing versus a Mondelez specifically on the deforestation topic. They use these reports mainly for engagement in this stage. So that means they have conversations about why is it not going well, but also the other way around. If they see a company is actually doing a good job, how can we use these lessons also for the other companies that they talk with? And this will only become more important because of regulations that I think we'll touch upon later. Yeah, that there can also be financial consequences. And then two others quickly. So we also work a lot with banks. That's mainly for their carbon offsetting projects. Of course, a lot of scrutiny at the moment about that, but that only shows that we need reliable approaches to really measure that. And we work, for instance, on that with Rabobank, where we look for their offsetting projects, how much carbon has actually been generated. And then the last thing is investment funds. So we do a lot of work with investment funds in agriculture and forestry, where we measure environmental KPIs for them. They usually invest in companies active in sensitive landscapes. So for instance, a Proparco or an Ant Green Fund that give out sustainability-linked loans to palm growers in Ivory Coast. And we then see, okay, do we have that positive impact or not? And that's also a really great partnership because they are not the only organization getting the data. We also really bring it to the companies on the ground. So the company that they invest in uses our tools to follow up actively on the ground when illegal activities are happening.
That's great, very clear, thank you. You had one more point, or?
No, that was three.
Maybe just before going to the topic of regulations, indeed, may I ask you just two little precisions on the company model, just for all your potential clients here. The first one would be, do you focus only on deforestation, and if so, maybe why? And the second one is about what Madame Emmanuelle Mouret just said, about the fact that we need data that is more sort of proactive, that permits to really compare in time what is happening. I understand that you can do this thanks to satellites. Is it really the case?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. So I'll start with the first one. So indeed, our main focus is deforestation. Also because it's actually relatively easy to measure, right? A tree is there or it's not there. So the issue really is not in the technology domain. It's actually us, humans, right? How do we use this information to drive positive change? And that's actually where a lot of our work is, not on the technology, but working with companies to ensure that they use the data in the right way. And that's where we can win the most. Then at the same time, we are, of course, looking at an ESG-wide portfolio, but we're mainly investigating partnerships on that. Then about the proactive approach, that is, of course, what we want to achieve. I saw positive vibes only, so I'm going to try not to be too negative. But when we talk about using data proactively, it's often quite challenging, right? We already see working with a lot of companies that reacting to deforestation happening is already very difficult because supply chains are complex. There might be local regulations which makes it challenging to follow up. So we prefer to say, let's fix that first and then move to the proactive part.
All right, understood. So you indeed mentioned that the market is being pushed to evolve by regulatory evolutions. Can you tell us a bit more about how regulations like CSRD, and I'll let you say the whole term, or the EU anti-deforestation law can influence the activities of financial institutions, corporate, and so your own development?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's not go into too much detail on regulation. That would make no one happy. But in simple terms, there are a couple of regulations coming up, specifically looking at due diligence and reporting for the environmental footprint. And they also apply to financial institutions or will apply in the future. And some of them can be quite tricky, and that's especially the EU deforestation regulation, which has a lot of difficult components that, to be honest, a lot of companies active in supply chains are quite scared of that regulation coming up because it's so difficult to implement it on a global scale. But I think what you can do now and should do already as a financial institution is prepare for it. So that means really understanding what do these regulations mean for me as a financial institution, and if we have investments, are they ready for this, right? And if they are not, what do they still need to do? Because we as a company, we give the tools to companies, but they, in the end, need to implement it and ensure that they can comply.
And additionally, which effect do you expect from the launch of the TNFD framework in the next month, so task force on nature-related financial risks?
Yeah. Great that you remembered the abbreviation. Yeah, that's also a working group in which we've been involved. And what I really like about it, that it's really financial institutions getting together and sharing experiences on how to implement measuring environmental risk and learn from each other. So I think that's really the biggest benefit from that, being open, transparent, and sharing these experiences.
Absolutely. To finish, in your activities, you witness the loss of biodiversity on a daily basis, so it's not positive vibes, but it's a reality, unfortunately. What would be your message to economic and financial actors to halt and reverse nature loss in this decade?
Yeah, I will end on a positive note, so don't worry. Yeah, I think you just need to start, because there is no perfect data. We don't have the perfect metrics to measure environmental risk right now, especially not for financial institutions. So it's about starting with what we have now. You can work with us or you can work with other organizations. It doesn't matter. There are more than enough. But start doing it, because you shouldn't underestimate when you understand your risk and start talking to your investments, you can change a lot. Because we have a positive example, and it's actually the palm oil industry. And I think everyone here thinks palm oil's evil. We now have butter in the supermarket, which is palm oil free, but it's actually an industry that is doing really well right now. It has been under scrutiny for 20 years. Governments, NGOs, financial institutions have been bashing companies to improve their practices, and rightfully so. And now, the past 5 years, we really see that positive change. So in Indonesia, Malaysia, deforestation has declined tremendously, and that is some of the change that you can bring. But so start, but also give it some time, because it takes time to see in the end the positive impact.
Thank you very much, Nan. It was a pleasure discussing with you, and thank you for those positive vibes.
Thank you for having me.